Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be seeing how to send a post request to our Express server. So we're going to open our Express server. And before we add the post functionality, we're going to define a new function. We're going to be using this function to generate an ID. So we're going to call it generate ID. And it's not going to take in any input. And what it's going to do is first it's going to calculate the maximum ID in our collection. We're going to call it max ID. And we're going to put in a ternary operation. So it's going to be an if-else statement. The condition is if notes.length is greater than 0. That means our collection has a note inside it. If that is true, then we want to calculate the maximum. So we're going to use the max function. And we're going to pass it in a copy. So in order to copy our notes collection, we're going to use 3 dots. So we're going to copy our notes and we're going to use the map function. And for each note, we're going to extract the note's ID. So how this works is the map function is going to return a list of the IDs of each note. And the max function is going to extract the maximum number from that list. And if our notes collection is empty, in that case we want our max ID to be 0. So once we've calculated our maximum ID, we're simply going to return max ID plus 1. So now we can create our post functionality. So we're going to have app.post, and the first argument is going to be an address to our server, which is going to be API/notes, and it's also going to take in a function. The first thing we need to do is extract the body from the request. So we're going to have a variable called body, and we're going to extract request.body. So what request.body is, it's going to be an object that contains the note's content and the note's importance. So the first thing we need to do is we need to check if body.content is empty. So in order to do that, we simply add in an exclamation. So this is going to check if body.content is defined. If it's not defined, we want to return a response.status of 400, and we're going to end our response. So if the content is empty, we want to return a status code of 400, which means bad request. Once we've checked that the content is not empty, then we want to create a note object, which is going to have a content attribute, and we're going to pass in body.content. It's also going to have an importance. So we're going to have important. And here we're going to pass in body.important or false. So how this is going to work is, in case important is not provided by the client, then we want a default value of false. So if body.important is true, then the statement is going to evaluate to true. But if body.important is undefined, which in JavaScript stands for false, in that case the default value of important is going to be false. And finally, it's going to have an ID, and we're going to pass in our function, which is generate ID. Now that we have a note object, the next thing we need to do is add this note object to our notes list. In order to do that, we're going to set notes to notes.concat, and we're going to pass in the note object we just created. And once that's done, we're going to have a response, which is going to be the new note that has been added. Now, before we continue, there's one more thing we need to add, which is a JSON parser. What this is going to do is it's going to let us take the JSON that we get from the request. That means that we get from the client, and it's going to convert that JSON to a JavaScript object. And once we've converted it to a JavaScript object, we can access the different components like the content and its importance. So in order to use the JSON parser, we're going to go to the top of our application, and we're going to add the statement app.use express JSON. So this is going to convert the request from JSON to a JavaScript object. Now we can either use Postman or the VS Code REST client to test out the post request. First, we need to start up our server. So we're going to open our terminal and navigate to this project, and we're going to run npm run dev. So first, let's test the post request using Postman. So we're going to open the Postman extension, and we're going to create a new HTTP request. Now in the URL field, we're going to put in the link to our server, and we're going to change the request from get to post. And to actually give it a note, we need to go to the body section. So this body section is going to be request.body, which we used in our code. So we're going to give it a raw body, and we're going to pass in an object. And this object is going to have a content key with a value, let's say Postman is better. And we can also provide an importance, which is not required, but we can provide it. So we're going to give it an important attribute of true. Now, before we send this request, we need to change the type of our body from text to JSON. And as we saw before, when we were using JSON, the keys need to be in quotations. So we're going to add quotations to content and to important. So this is going to be the body of our request. So now we can press on send. As you can see, we get the new note that has been added to our collection as a response. And to see that our note has been actually sent to our collection, we're going to change our request from post to get, and we're going to send this request. And as you can see below, we have our new note added. Now we can also use the REST client to test this functionality. So we're going to head back to our Express folder, and we're going to open requests, and we're going to create a new file called create_note. It's going to have the REST extension. And in here, we're going to have the post request, and we're going to pass in the link to our server. And in here, one thing you should not forget is you need to define the content type. So in our case, the content type is going to be application/JSON. And now we can provide the note that we want to add. So it's going to have a content. Let's give it a value of VS Code. REST client is better. And we're going to give it an importance of, let's say, false. So now we can send this request. As you can see, the response is going to be the new note that has been created. And now if we open our get all notes file and we send this request, we can see that VS Code REST client is better has been added to our collection. So this has been a lesson on sending a post request to our Express server. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel to show your support.